Hello and welcome to all of you who are joining us for this Consumer Protection Week special. Today we're focusing on financial health and mental wealth, the way that you can protect yourself and your money from scams. And I'm Lizanne Lightfoot. I'm the VP of Marketing at GoVA Foundation. We are a nonprofit focused on providing financial education to the military and veteran community. And I'm really honored to have with us today several experts in this space who are going to be talking to us about our military community, avoiding scams, and some of the most recent data supporting how you can protect yourself and your family. So I want to quickly introduce our expert panel here. Dr. Eric, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. I'm Eric Elbogen, and I work at the VA, and I'm the director of the National Veterans Financial Resource Center, FINVET.
And we are so grateful to have you and your expertise here. And Terry is joining us from the FTC. Can you please go ahead and introduce yourself and your team?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Terry Miller. I'm one of the consumer education specialists in the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection, specifically within the Division of Consumer and Business Education. And I'm joined by my colleague, Andrew Rayo. And together we lead our military consumer outreach. So really excited to color the conversation today with fraud and scams and how it's impacting our military service members, veterans, and families.
Absolutely. And Andrew, I'll give you a chance to say hi as well.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. As Terry mentioned, I also work in the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Consumer and Business Education. Thank you for having us here, Lizanne.
Of course. So big welcome to all of those who are joining us live. And if you're watching this during the replay, we certainly welcome your feedback and your questions. Those who are live, you can use the chat throughout this conversation to interact with our speakers, to ask questions that are relevant to you and your military families, or to react to any of the statistics and the data that is being shared throughout this conversation. So there's a chat bubble up at the top of your screen, and we encourage you to use that now. You can try it out and tell us what part of the country you're signing in from or any particular questions that you have on this topic. So I mentioned that GoVA has a focus on financial education and helping the military community to reduce stress and to support all those who are here. And so I want to begin by asking Eric Elbogen from the VA and from FINVET. I want to talk about some of the work that you've done and the research that you've provided to our military and veteran community. So if you can go ahead and get started with that, and I will welcome some of our participants who are signing into the chat from around the country.
Thank you, Lizanne. And also, thank you to I see a number of VA colleagues that are on this. So thank you for joining me. I hope that this is, I think, Lizanne, Terry, Andrew, this is just going to be such an important panel, as you could probably already see from the one slide that hopefully you're all seeing right now. I just want to give brief background. I am a clinical psychologist, and I started at the VA in 2007. And I was doing mental health treatment, and I wanted to know, okay, I was looking at a veteran in front of me. Why would they come back next week? What was valuable to them? What was important? What goals did they have? And I began to ask this, and I got responses. I want a meaningful job. I want to make a budget to pay for my grandkids' Christmas gifts. I just got scammed, and I'm in debt, and I'm at risk of being evicted. And so I began to hear about all these areas of financial challenges that veterans had, started a financial literacy group, and today that is FINVET at the VA. But what I'm going to share with you is a few things that almost as context for the rest of this hour, which are the specific financial challenges that have been documented for veterans. And one of the first things I learned was this, is veterans said, listen, Eric, the first time I was paying a light bill was I was in my 40s. And making a budget, paying rent. And what was going on is a decade after their civilian counterparts, active duty service members were transitioning to be veterans and were being financially independent for the first time. The problem is predatory lenders knew that too. And in the 2000s, some of the highest percentage of predatory lenders, payday lenders, pawn shops were located in the zip codes of military bases. And there still is a high proportion of those there. And you could see the consequences of some of that, which is younger veterans, and this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, are at risk of having those debt payments and credit card problems. There was a review of over 10 million bankruptcy records showing that veteran status is related to bankruptcy, and national studies showing credit card debt, pawn shop, payday loan use, that's all related. So you have all these, I'm learning all these things and I'm reading about them and the vulnerability that creates. And we're going to talk about what does the research say are some of the predictors of getting scammed. And one of them is financial vulnerability. Now, this, and Terry's going to talk more about this, and Andrew, this is from the Federal Trade Commission. Read those stats. That means in the year, I think that was 2024, Terry, nearly 100,000 fraud reports by veterans and military consumers, mostly veterans, with a total loss of $584 million. Now, here's the word that concerns me: reports. This could be the tip of the iceberg. We do not know. Most people are not reporting. And so I think that, and those numbers, yes, I saw that. Those numbers should be zero. So that's what this week is about. That's what all of you being on this call, actually, you're going to see in a minute that you could all be instruments of helping bring that down to zero, because the research shows that knowing about these scams and educating people about what the financial exploitation can be actually reduces the chance that fellow veterans are going to get scammed. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So I ran this study that looked at, it was a random national sample of all veterans, not just at VA, non-VA, and we found that in the last year, about 30% of those veterans endorsed those problems in the previous year. And those kinds of issues on the top related to mental health, feeling stress, shame, embarrassment. And we found actually also, and I looked at it for this talk today, the veterans who had mental health problems or had traumatic brain injury were twice as likely to report being victim of a scam. So there is an association. Important to know. Because we were seeing so many, and I was hearing heart-wrenching stories running a financial literacy group of scams, we created a curriculum about 10 years ago that, in fact, we created it more than 10 years ago. The study was just published 10 years ago, but it was one of the first financial literacy curriculum to include helping avoid scams. And what we did, we found that this intervention, financial literacy, improved, less impulse buying, being able to be more responsible and taking more of a pause. We're going to talk about, there's actually a link between financial literacy. The more financial literacy, the less likely veterans are to be scammed. At FINVET, we posted this flyer. We had this as merchandise. This was flyer for people. We had 10,000 of these 2 months ago, and they were gone within a month. And what this flyer does, and this is, if there's some take-homes for you all today, it's these 3 steps that you could all take, and you could teach people to take to avoid being scammed. And this is based on the research that we've done, and also from the groups that we were running. So 3 steps. You could all do this today. So I'm giving some practical tips as well. You're looking down at your wallet or your phone. It has your ID, there's money in there. Ask yourself, pause and think. This is going to be my responsibility. I want to make sure that I know who I'm dealing with. So you look in front of you. That's step 2. Did you interact? Yes, I could share this flyer, and it's available on our FinVet website. Thank you, Sherry. Is there a real person in front of you, or really more importantly, did you initiate the interaction? What we realized is that, and the research shows this, is that if you did not initiate it, you're at risk. You could walk away. So step 3, you look up, you look at the URL of the website, and you're in a building. You want to make sure you're in a place with a good reputation, or are you feeling pressured? If you are feeling pressured or you feel it's something shady, you could walk away. So one of the things is that what we want, and they'll be shared for sure, what we want everyone to do is to pause and think, what can you do? Now, this doesn't cover every scam. There's so many that are going on right now, and I know that Terry and Andrew are going to talk about it, but I think one of the things is that it's moving from thinking fast and impulsively to thinking slow. And I think that that's one way that veterans and you all, and we could all protect ourselves. So these are just quotes from veterans who we've been doing financial literacy training of staff, and the staff are doing financial literacy training of veterans. And this concept, this class on taking pause, and these are just some quotes of veterans who normally actually they were able to get their lives back by taking that pause and thinking. So what does the research say about this? There's not a ton out there, but there's this one terrific study that I found, and you could see the quote there. You'll get the slides if you want, but there's a study that looked at what are the predictors of different kinds of scams, and you could see there's actually different rates of scams on the bottom. Purchase scams are the most common, and there's opportunity scams like the romance and lottery scams, investment scams. But what are some of the risk factors? And these are the ones to take away. If you have veterans or you're a veteran with these, then these increase odds. This is what the science says. And this is not just veterans. This very consistent. This study is veterans, non-veterans. It's a general population study. And what I could tell you is that these factors are consistent across all literature about what are some of the key factors. So being lonely, having no one to talk to is actually about it, or not talking to someone else about it, no one to consult with, being isolated, those are real risk factors. Having financial vulnerabilities and fragility, that's for some kinds of scams, the opportunity-based, like, oh, you just won this lottery. And then financial literacy. So just having general financial literacy is going to be protective against being scammed. What's really protective, and this was across all the scams, and this, I feel like for me to learn this shows that what you're all doing today is actually doing this. The more you know about scams, the less likely you are to be scammed. So that 62 to 86% were the different kinds of scams. Just having knowledge about it, and you're letting other people know and other veterans know about this, actually is, yes, the clapping hands. And you could all do this yourselves today. You're reducing the chances that veterans are scammed by at least sharing that kind of information that Terry, Andrew, Lizanne, we're all going to be sharing with you today. So implications, being aware that certain kinds of individuals are, for prevention, might be at risk of different kinds of scams, like the threat-based scams for lonely individuals. Financial literacy literally can prevent scams. So greater awareness and incorporating fraud awareness into financial literacy programs. And the very thing that this whole week, that, the Slam the Scam week, letting people know about this is so critical for reducing scams. At the VA and across other agencies, including the FTC, there is a VSafe hotline. You can find this just vsafe.gov or this phone number, and that's where veterans or family members can wait. They can call up, is this a scam? Or they could be, you can find out what to do if you've been scammed. So just know that is there, the VSafe program. This is FINVET. You can Google FINVET. Please do not type in that 40-character URL, but that's all I could do. That's what I've got. But just Google FINVET. We have a lot of videos that go to the FTC, but also links to other resources, including that flyer, and that are targeted to veterans. And it's not just about protecting money. There's also budgeting, there's financial counseling, there's a lot of other resources at FINVET. And lastly, scams can increase financial stress, and financial stress has been shown in many studies to relate to suicide and mental health crises. So please be aware, and if you know of someone who's having a mental health crisis, have them call the Veterans Crisis Hotline, 988.1. And with that, I'm going to pass it over back to you, Lizanne.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for just that depth of information and research. I mean, you had a lot of positive feedback and celebration in the chat about just the practicality of taking those pauses, learning to think about your environment, think who's sending you things. I mean, we all need to slow down a little bit. And I've talked to other presenters about this before, that military life sometimes forces us into very quick decision making, whether that's a PCS move or transitioning out and looking for a new career, or, you're new in the area and you're trying to get adjusted and connect quickly to a lot of groups. And that exposes us to a lot of vulnerability. And so if we can get our community to kind of slow down and think about just what you were mentioning, who am I interacting with? What is this website? Is this a legitimate opportunity? Then that means so much. And it really resonated with what we're doing at GoVA. You kept emphasizing how the way to protect ourselves, obviously, aside from the practical steps of not sharing your personal information and checking those email addresses and things like that, but one of the big steps is financial education. If you understand your own finances, if you're feeling secure in terminology and what your options are, then you're much, much less likely to be victimized by some of these very strategic and well thought out outreach events. And so that's what we do at GoVA. We're all about financial education. We have, for those who don't know, we have a completely digital platform with a library of hundreds of financial resources. And it's all based on just educating people on starting at a 101 level. If you haven't done budgeting before, or you don't understand the different terminology of accounts, there's really great resources there that lay it out in a very colorful, user-friendly, interactive way. But then you can truly advance through the platform. It has a curated experience for every user, a little bit like signing on to Netflix or Amazon, where as you start to interact with the resources, it'll suggest things that are also relevant to your life experience. And one of the areas that are most relevant to our conversation today is the user's financial stress and their money personality. What we've learned is that everyone approaches money and finances and savings from different perspectives. It depends how you grew up, what your household was like, what the adults around you were modeling. And so because of that, some of us come into adulthood with different pros and cons and vulnerabilities when it comes to our finances. So understanding where that psychology is coming from and how it affects your own ability to make financial choices, to save for your future, to prioritize different spending, that has made a huge difference for the military and veteran members that are on the Edge platform. So for those of you who are not signed into the Edge yet, it is absolutely a free resource available to our entire military and veteran community. I'll make sure to get those links out into the follow-up materials. But I also wanted to emphasize just the importance and the connection here of financial stress to these identity theft and scam events. So that's why I was really excited to have the FTC representatives here today. I know that you have a wealth of data and some really updated information on just the current scams and strategies that are out there, which we all want to stay up to date on. But we really want to look at how avoiding scams or becoming victimized by them has a direct impact on our mental health and our financial wellness. So, Terry, I'd like to invite you to go ahead and share what you have. And those of you who are in the chat, you can continue to react and ask questions. There is a react button at the top of the screen if you want to celebrate or show surprise at any of the comments that they have. So go ahead, Terry.
And I agree, Lizanne. The surprise faces, the reactions are definitely helpful as we're having these conversations that this information lands. So keep it up. So as we said before, I am Terry Miller, one of the consumer education specialists with the Federal Trade Commission. And our Bureau of Consumer Protection does several things to talk about fraud and to protect consumers, including military consumers. So, today we're going to be talking about a lot, but obviously when we talk about financial health, losing money to a scammer or finding out that a piece of your personal information has been misused, identity theft, that can have a really big impact on your mental health. We think about folks who lose their life savings to what they thought was a good investment or to someone they thought was a love interest. That can be devastating. And so, racking up debt, those kinds of things, it definitely, it's real. And it's happening. So just to give you a little overview of what the FTC does in consumer protection, we work to stop fraud, deception, and unfair business practices. And you can see there on the screen, one of the big ways we do that is we enforce the law. We do investigations, we sue companies and people who break the law. And the goal is always to get money back to the people whenever possible. If a company is targeting service members or veterans with specific angles. We've talked about predatory lending and, things like that. The FTC's goal is to bring those cases and put those guys out of business. So that's a really neat part of what we do. The part that Andrew and I are here for today is the education and outreach piece. So we tell people about their rights in the marketplace. We also remind businesses of their responsibilities, and we use the research, the reports that I'll talk about in a second, to bring these stories to life, to let folks just like us know what are scammers doing, what are those new angles, and how can we protect ourselves. So very thankful to be here and have this conversation today. So as we gather data about scams and identity theft, we know what people share with us from events like this, from what they tell us when they report fraud. And I'm going to talk a lot about reporting because it's so important. And what happens when people call our consumer response center because they need help. What we know is that it can have significant impacts, and not everyone reports fraud. So Eric mentioned that before. It is so important to do that, to report it, because it helps us to bring cases. It helps us to tell the stories and explain how it's happening. And I just want to acknowledge that sometimes you may not know that you have been impacted by a scam or identity theft. But really, sometimes it's shame. or embarrassment. And that's real too. And so I hope the information, the knowledge that we give today sort of debunks some of that. So let's take a look at some of the recent data that we have, the top scams that people are experiencing, including military consumers. So every year we use these reports from people across the country to tell these stories. How are scammers trying to get your money? What are they saying? How are they reaching you? What is that information? And that allows us to bring those cases. Unfortunately, we don't have the most updated 2025 data. That usually comes out around this time, and it just didn't line up with this presentation. But that definitely, that doesn't mean we don't have any data to share with you. And so in the first 3 quarters of 2025, so we took in 2.4 million fraud reports. And that was a loss. That was a total loss of $12.3 billion. So no, we don't have the full scope of what was reported in 2025, but in the first 3 quarters, we saw $12.3 billion reported lost. So that really equates to more than 1 in 3 people who reported a scam to us lost money. So it is happening, and that trend indicates that both fraud and losses are only increasing from last year. So last year, just to give you an idea of just one stat, all of 2024 last year, we saw $12.5 billion lost in all of 2024. And now I'm saying 12.3 billion in just the first 3 quarters. So when we have those stats for 2025, I think it's fair to say that number will unfortunately be a little higher. And this is what we saw. So the first, the 5 most reported frauds in Q1, 2, and 3, imposters. If you have heard impersonator scam, imposter scam, the FTC will never ask you, the IRS will never ask you. These are imposter scams. We see scammers impersonating government agencies all the time, saying you owe taxes, saying we're going to arrest you if you don't give us personal information or money. That is definitely trending to be the top scam that we see year over year. But it's not just government imposters that scammers are impersonating. It's sometimes a family member. And this one is important for military. They're saying they are a service member and I'm stranded somewhere and I need you to wire me money in order to help me get out of this issue. Sometimes they are pretending to be a love interest, and love quickly turns to, I need money. You are my only hope. So sometimes it's a romance scam. And sometimes it's your bank. So we'll talk about that in a second. But online shopping and negative reviews, we've seen an increase in that area as well. People often order things and don't get what they ordered, or they get billed for something that they didn't order. Internet services sit right in the middle at number 3. Business and job opportunities are 4th here, but I was a military spouse, and I think about the moves and needing to find a job. Sometimes I'm looking for a job in one state and living in another, or one state and moving to a different country. Scammers know that movement in the military often means that people may be looking for opportunities and need to have that extra income, and may not always have the tools and the resources to do it on the ground. So that's when I always think about when I talk about military, and also investment. So that rounds out this list. Nearly 80% of people who reported an investment-related scam lost money. And the median loss, if you're listening, the median loss for what people reported for investment scams was $10,000. I don't know about you, but that is a lot of money. And often people will go for an investment scam because you're looking to make money, right? You're looking to make good on what you already have. And the thought of losing $10,000 in the process of that could be devastating. So I just wanted to emphasize that. All right. So when we think about how scammers are reaching us, yes, Lizanne, yikes. 10,000 when you're thinking you're going to make some. That's pretty terrifying. So, all right. So when it comes to how scammers are reaching people, that's an important key piece that we talk about here as well, where we're slowing down and paying attention to where these offers are coming. Text is the number one method that we saw in the first three quarters of 2025. And I don't know about you, but I got a lot of toll scams, unpaid tolls, government grants, things like that in 2025. So this is no surprise to me that was the top method that people reported in 2025. So scammers are using them to impersonate the government. They are sending fake delivery notices from FedEx and, Amazon. They're sending texts about recruiting. Again, military spouses and service members who are transitioning to civilian life. You're seeing this opportunity to make money from your couch very easily. No effort, guaranteed money. Those are text messages that we're seeing. And again, those investment scams promising high returns, $10,000 as the median loss. I can't get that out of my head. So that said, the highest losses to scams that we saw started on social media. And that was to the tune of $1.7 billion lost. So social media, it's so important for us to be having these conversations with everyone in our families and our networks to be aware of what's happening on social media. And then the highest reported losses per person that we saw so far in 2025, they started on the phone. I've gotten so many calls just this week, one ring and it goes straight to voicemail, or a voicemail and a call I didn't expect. But those are the highest reported losses per person. So once a scammer gets you on the phone, that median loss was more than $1,800. So again, it's not $10,000 like an investment scam, but $1,800. I'm still not trying to hand that over to someone. But it's so important to know, if a scammer gets you on the phone, you could end up losing money, and that median loss being $1,800 says, we need to be paying attention when these phone calls come. Okay, so the last thing on the data is this. So people reported losing $1.9 billion to scammers using bank transfer or payments. So, it's not important to know how scammers are reaching you. It's also important to know how people are sending money to scammers. So bank transfers and payments are a big one. $1.9 billion lost in 2025. But people are also reporting paying scammers using cryptocurrency and payment apps like Venmo and Zelle. Those were the top three payment methods that people use when they reported losing money to scammers. So it's just really important for us to watch our duckies, watch our money, and also watch how these unexpected requests are coming. If they're telling you, you need to wire me money or send me money through a payment app or a cryptocurrency or something like that, it's important to know that often scammers will ask you to send money this way. And if you're thinking of it already, it's because it's really hard for you to get your money back. Once you transfer that money, they may not be willing to give it back. They're not going to give it back. Let's be real. So that payment method piece is really important when you're talking about scams. Okay, so every year I mentioned we have that 2025 data book. It is coming. I always love to share a couple of slides from it because there are some military consumer sections in there that tell you exactly what military consumers reported to us. I can't share that with you today, but I can tell you that in the year before, so 2024, the number of fraud losses that active duty service members, veterans, and families reported to the FTC was a total of $584 million. And that was where we got that surprise face when Eric shared it a little earlier. So I'm bringing it up again. That is a lot of money lost to fraud. And we'll just assume that number will be a little higher in 2025. So important for us to be aware of imposters, people who are calling us, texting us, emailing us, sending messages on social media, pretending to be someone that they're not, and, trying to trick you into sending them money or sharing your personal information. The bottom line here is that scammers tell a lot of different stories. I always think about, getting a call from someone who says, I'm calling from Navy Federal or USAA, and I am in the fraud department and I detected fraud on your account. Can you confirm your account number with me? And we can, stop the problem. That's, someone said in the chat, I like that term pause. That's your moment to pause. Why would my bank call me and ask me to share my bank account number with them? They already have it. So that's your sign to pause and say, that's good to know. Hang up the phone, pull out your debit card or your banking app, and reach out to Navy Federal or USAA from a number that you know is real. Scammers use these banks specifically because they know that's where military families bank, right? It's called an affinity scam. They use a piece of information that's familiar to us in the network to get us to trust them. But making sure that you pause and just think about what's being asked of you. Why would they need that information? What happens if I share it? I'm thinking about that slide that Eric had with the, look down, look up, look forward. So I'm hoping that what we're sharing is complementing each other, because I feel like it's clicking for me too, even though I do this all the time. So 584 million lost in 2024. It's going to go up in 2025. And the thing I just want to emphasize here, this is just what people report. The shame around paying a scammer can be really embarrassing. You don't want to tell your spouse if you lost 15 grand in what you thought was going to be a good investment. But the important thing here is really, really having these conversations quickly and seeing how you can recover so that it doesn't affect your mental health any longer than it has to. So, sharing the scam experience with someone I talked about the embarrassment of telling your spouse that I made this mistake and how important that is. But also, sharing it with your family, with your parents who might be older adults, and saying, I think I'm a smart person and I have this degree and that experience, and they still got me. That helps other people to think, if it could happen to them, it could happen to me. I need to pay attention. And one other group that we often don't think about is our kids. Kids are getting phones as younger and younger. And scammers don't check your age before they send you a text message, right? So if you have a 16-year-old and they're driving and they have a driver's license and then they get an unpaid toll scam that says, we're going to revoke your license, they may panic and think, I can't lose my license. I didn't go through a toll. What's going on? So sharing that these things exist, sharing the scams that you get on your phone and saying, I got another one. Do you see this? I hate when they do this. This is how I can tell it's a scam. I'm never going to click that link, things like that. Just normalizing the conversation about scams helps people to normalize spotting them. And also what happens after if you do accidentally pay. I did like, Eric shared the 78% less likely to, pay a scammer if you're aware. So this is that key piece. We're sharing how do you talk about scams and normalize that since it's happening to us all. The last thing I'll share in this part right now is just reporting. So I've given you numbers. We've given you examples, we've given you all of this information, and the key here is reporting a scam. Maybe it didn't happen to you, it happened to your parent or your kids or someone else. Help them go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. When you report, it really gives us a key piece to bringing those cases, like I said before, but also building awareness and consumer education. You are sharing, you're helping your community essentially to spot scams and hopefully avoid them. It's a few steps to report, and it's shared with more than 2,000 federal, state, and local law enforcement enforcers across the country. And so it's really, really important that you share what's happening to you so that we can keep the conversation going with everyone else. And with that, Lizanne, I'm going to pause here and hand it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on, we are going to have a great panel discussion here with all of our experts. But Terry, it looked like you got a question while you were doing your presentation from Wanda. I know you only had the 2025 data from January through September, but she's wondering, in general, have you noticed if there is a month or a season that reports more scams? And we're all curious about the holidays, if you notice any spikes in reporting during that time.
Not that I am aware of. I think maybe the angle changes, right? So we talk a lot about holiday shopping, at the end of the year as people are getting ready for, holiday shopping and Christmas and things like that. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Andrew, do you?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you, Terry. I'm not aware of any particular month per se where we see spikes in general reporting, but certainly, I mean, each month kind of brings its own. There's some sort of time, like tax time, or like you already mentioned, the holiday season, maybe back to school. Any time of year that you can imagine there could be a scam, there are. And so the like you said, Terry, the angle is constantly shifting. And so we're always getting reports, but just to emphasize what Terry said, we want to hear every report. So we absolutely encourage it for anything at all. And whether it's you, someone if you suspect a scam, just getting this information is just so vital for us to be able to bring the cases that we do.
Yeah, sure. And you're right, Wanda. They don't go on vacation.
And you do have a question. William pointed out earlier when you were talking about the importance of, checking links and, legitimate sites and calling your bank from a legitimate number that you can trust. He did observe that sometimes spammers will spoof those legitimate phone numbers, so it might appear on your phone instead of a 90% spam likelihood, it will come up as a legitimate call from USAA or from Navy Fed. So just because that number is appearing legitimate when you receive it, that is not what we mean by a trustworthy, legitimate number. We mean going to the website and calling, the 1-800 number that USAA has listed as their legitimate number.
Yes.
And then he had a follow-up question, and this is probably for Terry. Do the different government agencies share their fraud information, like with IC3 and the FTC website, and where should we begin to make a report?
So, yes, they do all share a lot. Most of them feed into the FTC's Consumer Sentinel Network, which is really nice because our numbers sort of, encompass all of those things. When people report through VSafe, through IC3, through, all of the local law enforcement, it feeds into the FTC. So that number is pretty comprehensive. When you are reporting, it really depends on what happened. So, if it is, let's just say it's an imposter, an IRS imposter, the IRS wants to know about it as well, right? So maybe you report it to the IRS, but you can always go back to the FTC as well. We want to know too. So reportfraud.ftc.gov. Chances are IRS is going to report it to us as well. So it really depends on the type of scam that you're experiencing, where you go, in addition to reportfraud.ftc.gov.
Absolutely. I think that's great perspective. So what we want to do, as we have a few minutes left with all of our experts here today, is to ask a couple of questions and get your unique perspectives on this topic of financial wellness and financial health, particularly tied to consumer protection. And so I wanted to start with asking both Eric and Terry. We know that when, military families or veterans are experiencing theft, both of you referred to this cycle of shame and the silence that we often impose on ourselves, not wanting to speak up about any type of scam that we've experienced. So from your perspectives and your research, how would you recommend breaking that cycle? And, what can we do to help someone from a mental health perspective and from that consumer protection perspective?
Lizanne, I think one of the things about it is, so that I'm just looking at a national survey of romance scams. And in terms of, they looked at across the country, They interviewed and did surveys of it. 60% indicated experiencing shame. And at the same time, one of the risk factors is not talking to people about it. So I think one of the things that I've done, and I mean, if I were to do this here, by show of hands, how many of you either know someone or yourselves have been scammed? By show of hands, or, So I was giving a talk to several hundred veterans, and I asked them that question. This was in person, and everyone raised their hands. And I think one of the reasons why that's important is it gets at that isolation and realizing, wait a second, yes, I do feel embarrassed and I do feel shame, but at the same time, this is actually a rampant problem. So I think beating the stigma of that and beginning to recognize that this is a problem that really so many veterans and non-veterans have, I think is one way to begin to break through that and see if someone doesn't feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And Terry, I think you had some great points in your presentation, but anything else that you wanted to add on that?
No, I mean, I think to reiterate, Eric was just saying, like, the antidote to that isolation and embarrassment is community. It's sharing. It's knowing that you're not alone, and just, knowledge being the key. So action sometimes can get you out of it. So is there something I can do? Yes, there is something you can do. You can call your credit card company and dispute that charge. You can contact your bank. You can report it and get a recovery plan. Like, there are things that you can do. And sometimes I think that helps to, get out of that cycle. I've taken action to protect myself moving forward.
And actually, I'm just going to springboard off what Terry just said. Think about, from a mental health perspective, perceived control and perceived lack of control. When you are a victim to being scammed, you don't feel control. So to be able to have things you can do is so key for one's mental well-being. So I think that's really a great point, Terry.
Yeah.
For sure. And then I want to talk about this educational aspect, because that's what's most integral to GoVA. And I loved hearing in Eric's presentation how we can protect ourselves and give ourselves better fighting chances against scammers just through the process of gaining knowledge and pursuing financial education. And I've talked before about the money personality and the financial stress assessments that we have at GoVA. So we've definitely seen that there's a connection between people's emotional state and then how they're making their financial decisions. So, Eric, I'm wondering, from that mental health perspective, are there certain warning signs that someone is in a financial stress state that is maybe beyond the help of basic financial education, and that we need to be doing something else? And what would you say to veterans who find themselves at those more extreme levels of financial stress?
Well, I mean, the financial stress can be caused by scams, or it can be caused by foreclosures, repossessions, credit scores going down, collection agencies, and those are shown to be related to mental health problems. And one of the things that we can do education, but we could also do navigation. We can navigate veterans to the Department of Justice has approved credit counseling agencies across the country that can help with veterans who might be in debt for all those reasons above, and come up with debt management plans or ways to get out of debt, and also help with budgeting. And many of them are free or low cost. So just being able, and even just knowing about how we can navigate to professional, accredited, and certified services, I think would be a good step.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that idea of kind of having direction and then guiding people to that next step. Terry, you mentioned that scammers are targeting people, particularly during different moments of vulnerability. And we talked about how in military life, that's everything from, a PCS move to a job transition, or any financial hardship that military families are experiencing along that path. So how and when have you seen scammers targeting military families, and how do we know that we are in a most vulnerable position?
Well, I think the military life cycle sort of hits on all of the different ways that scammers target anyone. Sometimes it just happens that we get them more frequently. Like you mentioned, we're moving more often. Any PCS move is stressful. You're getting rid of one place and you're looking for another, often sight unseen. And that means that, a scammer who's saying you have to pay a deposit before I show you a place, I need a place to live. And sometimes I'm panicking and I have little kids and he's on deployment. Like there are so many, things that could be stressful in that situation, for example, that might make you make decisions you wouldn't if you were in a less stressful situation. So moves. I remember buying a car, selling 2 cars and knowing that I was going to need 2 vehicles when I went overseas, buying and selling vehicles. Enrolling kids in school and aftercare programs. There's just so many ways that we have to share information, more than the average bear is what I say. And then if you're doing it with online, you're sharing a lot more information. You're filing taxes to multiple states. You're, sharing social security numbers to enroll kids at the YMCA. It's the workflow. It's the lifestyle, and the entry points is really the key there. Scammers know this across the board, and the likelihood of it happening in the military life cycle is often more just because we're doing more things on a regular basis.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And that explains some of these really tailored scams that are reaching our community specifically. And so because of that, I think it's great that we do have resources specifically for our community. So I know that you both alluded to some, but I wanted to make sure that we had actionable steps for our audience here today. So Andrew, if you want to share some of the FTC resources on this topic, and then Eric, I'll definitely encourage you to share some as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lizanne. So it's certainly worth repeating, as we've mentioned many times across our panel, about how talking about scams is one of the best ways to fight fraud. And so this website here that you're seeing on the screen is militaryconsumer.gov. That's where we have free tools that help you to start that conversation. And it can be a difficult conversation to have. But again, starting here is a great place to be. Whether you're spending your money or you're earning it, borrowing it, no matter what you're doing with it, militaryconsumer.gov is here to help give you practical advice. And there's a blog that we actually update weekly to share all of the scams that we're seeing. I know we talked about all of the reports that we get, the stats that we compile, but the blog is really where we translate that into the most plain language, most easily understandable way to know what's going on. What are the trends that we're seeing? What are the scams that are emerging that you can spot and avoid? And so the one key piece that I'll give here is to subscribe. If you go to militaryconsumer.gov/blog, you can subscribe for this blog. And again, you'll get those scam alerts sent straight to your email inbox. We promise not to inundate you, but certainly to keep you updated. And I also want to mention that we'll keep you updated on events that are coming up as well. One big one for us, certainly on our military outreach team, is Military Consumer Month. That's coming up in July, and it's an annual thing. So all of the alerts that you get from the blog, they're so easily shareable, whether you're on social media, say, Facebook, X, or even on LinkedIn. And if you're looking to utilize our agency's tools for military consumer protection, certainly check out militaryconsumer.gov/toolkit. That's where you'll find links to our military data, graphics that you can share, free digital and printable shareables to help save anyone in your life, but also the service members, veterans, and families that are in your community to spot, avoid, and report fraud. So if after today's presentation you're looking to share information that you've heard from all of us, but also to have something physical that you can pass around on helping you to spot, avoid, report, recover from scams, I highly encourage you to check out our website, ftc.gov/bulk order. That's where you can order our free publications. You'll see a couple here on the screen, and there's so many more than just these. And yeah, these are just so great to have in hand to share, community centers, wherever you may go. And I will also mention, not only is this all free, it's free to order, it's free to have them delivered to you, but I actually happen to manage the print program. So for any reason you're not able to get all of the copies that you're looking for, I know we have some caps on the website just by default. Feel free to reach out to me. My email address is arayo@ftc.gov, and I'm happy to coordinate that print order for you. So one of the knowns that we can share is that scams are always changing. I think that's a given. So the best way to stay on top of the emerging scams, all of the changes, the trends, is again to sign up for the military consumer alerts. So just reemphasizing militaryconsumer.gov/blog, and connecting with us on social media. You can connect with us on Facebook at Military Consumer, and on X at Mil Consumer. So those are two great ways to get all of the information that we just shared sent to you, and we do hope that you'll sign up. That's all I have on the resources side. I will just say one quick anecdote. We're talking about scams, and just in the last, I think it was just yesterday, my mom actually texts me and says, "Hey, I got this text that looks like it's from where we live in Maryland, the MVA, in Maryland, and it says that if I don't pay now, like my license will be revoked or whatever, but I knew not to, and I reported it to the FTC and deleted the text message, and I was just so proud." so very real. These are real. We're all getting these texts, we're all getting these messages or calls, however. But certainly what you pass on to other people makes a difference. So that's just all I wanted to share on that. Back to you, Lizanne.
For sure. Thank you for sharing those resources. And that does relate to a question we got from Natalie in the chat that I wanted to address while we had you here. She does say, of course, we all agree that we should be reporting scams, and Terry's emphasized how we want to be reporting to the FTC. But Natalie's question is, what do we do when it's a family member who doesn't think they're being scammed and they keep sending, gift cards and money, and even when you try to convince them, they don't see a problem with it and are just going to continue the behavior? Is there any approach that is known to be effective or to kind of really break through in that situation?
I'll grab that one because so Andrew shared our print materials, and I think they are so helpful. One example is I have a friend who is a bank manager, and they had someone who was in a romance scam, and they knew it, and the person was lonely. She was older, she was lonely, and she just could not believe that this person would lie to her. And so my friend messaged me and said, "Do you have anything?" And I gave him a one-pager that said, "This is what a romance scam looks like. They'll say they're in the military and they're stationed overseas, and that's why they can't meet you. They got in trouble and they can't get help from anyone but you." And seeing it written from the government, written from an official expert or whatever you want to call it, really helped her to see it. And that's where she admitted, I'm lonely. I can't believe I almost fell for that. So sometimes it's seeing it printed. The FTC has lots that you can just print out yourself or just show them on your phone. But, sometimes taking it outside of, you're just jealous, or you're just trying to keep me lonely. Looking at other resources like the things we've shared today with FinVet and FTC, sometimes that's really helping them see it from someone else.
Thank you. That's a great perspective. And Natalie, I hope that helps. Eric, I did want to give you the last word here. We're talking about any resources that you have from the mental health side, especially for our veteran community, and then really just on how we can continue to reinforce these community connections. I've heard from both of you today how, community and education and connection to others is really the way to break these cycles. So what advice do you have for your military and veteran communities who might be looking for resources?
Thanks, Lizanne. So at FinVet, it was really in response to a lot of veterans who were just leaving the military, and they're saying, listen, there's resources in so many places. I really just want a one-stop shop for scams, but all things financial. And that's what we have at the FinVet website. And we have a lot of not just, we have links to FTC. You talked about your brochures, but you also have excellent videos. So there's a great video that's 90 seconds of why payday loans are bad. And apropos of what Terry just said, if a veteran watches that, they're going to be like, I'm never going to do this again. And sometimes it is like realizing, wow, that's exactly what's happening to me. And so I think that we have a lot of resources that go back to the FTC, but also to the Be Safe program. I think that just even recognizing the impact that scams and financial strain might have on stress, on embarrassment, shame, that there is a mental health component to it is something just to even recognize. So, and the research shows that recognizing all this is really going to keep you all safe and your families and military families and veterans just getting information out about it that Andrew just showed. So I think that that's one of the take homes from all this.
Absolutely. Well, GoVA is so honored to have this expert perspective today. I mean, we are just really in awe of having both the FTC and FINVET here together, sharing their resources related to consumer protection. So thank you sincerely for your time, for the research that both of your organizations have done, for the passion that you have in supporting our community. You're getting some positive feedback in the chat about just the instructions that have been shared today and some of the tips and how the information has been really helpful. For those who have been asking, we will absolutely send out the presentations that you saw today with the links, with those phone numbers and contact information for all the resources that were shared. So you will receive those in a follow-up email. And you'll also receive access to the EDGE, which is GoVA's financial education platform. We have many resources there, articles and videos and interactive tools on consumer protection and identity theft topics. Our resources direct you to the FTC, so it's not a replacement for anything that's been mentioned today. It's just another stepping stone in that financial educational process. So we certainly encourage you to check those out, to become informed, and to really encourage your community to continue this conversation, maintain those connections. When you hear about scams, please report them. I think if that's our one takeaway today. It sounds like Terry would be happy if we would just report them. And really to break that stigma of the shame and the mental damage that is caused by some of these scenarios. So thank you all again for the work that you are doing. We hope that you will continue uplifting our community. And for those who've been watching, thank you so much for your attention and your time today. You can reply to our follow-up emails if you have any questions for our experts. So thanks again, and I appreciate you all for signing in today.